Kia ora, I'm Erin J. Doyle. Welcome to my channel. I thought I should do a wrap up of my reading for New Zealand Pride Month because I said I was going to read a whole bunch of books by LGBT plus authors, so I feel like I should sort of give the report on how that went. The first book that I read in February was Freshwater. You've probably seen this being reviewed all over the place because it was booktube reviews that made me pick it up in the first place. But at any rate, it's about a young girl who is occupied by multiple other entities, basically. What I really liked about this story was the narration style. It starts off being narrated by we being the entities that occupy her. They start the story off while she is still in utero and tell the story of her birth and then kind of entering into and becoming kind of confined within her and the early years of her life, during which they talk about, being surprised when she does certain things, being proud when she does other things, and then also the way that their presence within her is affecting her. And they also prove in the long run to be a slightly unreliable narrator, so it's quite interesting in that we don't actually get to hear from her until maybe halfway through the book, maybe even further than that. She's a college student before we get to kind of see her perspective. We also get a perspective of just one of those entities, which at one point becomes able to completely occupy and take over her body and take charge of certain situations so that she doesn't have to. And she is consciously aware of this entity. And, she's able to have conversations with it and all that kind of thing. So it's really interesting. There's a whole bunch of references to stuff that I don't have any knowledge of, so I'm assuming there's like cultural, possibly religious words and terminology that I don't recognize, but you kind of get the gist of in the context of the story, but it doesn't spell everything out so that it's not kind of trying to teach you, it's just kind of inviting you to learn, I guess, which I also kind of liked. So yeah, interesting. I did like the way it was told, not 100% sure I was down with the ending. It was just fine. But I do find also when you read books from authors who are, from quite distinctly different cultural backgrounds, you do find little things like that, like the endings I think really highlight where there is a cultural difference between you as the reader and the author, because what makes an ending acceptable seems to change between different cultures, so I think that was evident in this one. Okay, I got hot. Next, I read The Camino Club. This is a young adult, so whatever opinions I have on it should probably be taken with a grain of salt, because I'm far from the target reader of this, but as someone who's walked the Camino, I can at least say that the description is on point. There are definitely places in this that I immediately recognised from my own travels. I've talked about this in a previous video, which I will link, but to summarise, this is a book about a group of people who've been given the option of juvenile detention or walking the Camino. So there's a bunch of kids who are meeting each other as they arrive and then going on this big journey together, and it's really focused on their relationships and them dealing with the various difficulties they've got back home which led to them getting into trouble and having to come on the Camino to begin with. So this is a very relationship focused story, not a travel setting based story, despite the glorious setting, which I think is something that most people would actually really enjoy. So I think great. This does deal with some pretty serious topics and is actually the only print book I've ever seen that actually contains a content advisory for minor character death, homophobic bullying, discussion of conversion therapy, and homophobic parents. So you can immediately see some, but not necessarily all, of the difficulties which these characters are going to deal with whilst they are on this amazing journey in Spain. Like I said, I'm not a young adult, so I don't 100% know if a young adult would enjoy this. I don't know, I'm a grown-up, but I thought it was pretty good. My third book for my Pride reading, I actually haven't finished. It's Ransack, which is a collection of poetry, and I've only read a teeny tiny bit of it, but that was the plan. I don't read poetry very fast. I probably read maybe one collection of poetry a year, so I continue to chip away at this. Further comments to come, I guess. For now, enjoying, but also possibly disclaimer that I know the author. Actually, I probably should have said that for this one as well. But, like, we follow each other on Instagram, actually have been in the same room, so different levels of knowing each other. But at any rate, I'm still working on it because poetry, hard to read. Where am I going to put you? Yes. The fourth book that I had intended to read in February has only just arrived in the bookstore. It's not their fault that it's too late. I did order it knowing that it was out of stock, not just with them, but with their supplier, and even though they said it would be here in February, we did have a week-long shutdown as well, so that's fine. I'll read it another time. What this did mean was that I had to find another book to read. The one I picked didn't fit in with my Pride theme, but never mind. I chose to read Banned Book Club, which is a graphic novel. Editing me here. I wanted to refilm the stuff that I had said about Banned Book Club. Can't be bothered moving to the cute side of the room, so hideous but functional side of the room it will have to be, and just ignore the background. So, Banned Book Club is about a young woman who goes off to college and she is invited to a book club, and it's only after she arrives that she discovers that they are reading banned books, and this starts her on the path of educating herself about certain things and taking part in the sort of student body's protest movements against the government. This is very much a story about people protesting. It's not a book about Korea's political history. So even though that's the setting of it, there's nothing provided in the story that really teaches you about it if you don't already know things. So it kind of refers to leaders and events that I know nothing about, and even though they've been named in the book, they weren't presented along with sufficient information for me to now claim that I know anything about them. So I do think really this book's about the act of protest, not politics. I think I've already said that. Anyway, that was my general takeaway from it. It has a kind of hopeful ending, and I think I gave it 3 stars. I don't know. It's really hard to talk about a non-fiction book. So that's everything I read or started to read in February. Of the 3 that I've finished, I enjoyed all 3, but for very, very different reasons. They're all very different stories, and I think I recommend all 3 of them. If there's the sort of thing that you're interested in, I will read pretty much anything, so I feel like my recommendations should always be taken with that thought and consideration. If you enjoyed this video, do give it a like. If you're new here, hit subscribe and ring the bell. These things really help me out, and I'll see you next time. Bye! I finally got to the end. I've been trying to film this for over 45 minutes now. I finally actually got to the end.